Welcome, everyone, to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Wednesday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. We are live on twitch.tv/primetimepk. We have had a couple of issues with syncing things in the last couple of days. So hopefully it's fixed today. Hopefully, maybe. But if anyone in the chat is seeing any issues, please let me know. Coming up on the program, we are going to go through the entire National Football League as it is Power Rankings Day. So we are going to go through all of that, just ranking team by team and giving a couple thoughts there. Also going over the world of fantasy football after the full week done now, and going to break up some of the fantasy football performances the same way we did on Monday, looking at the actual NFL performances. So confirmation bias, wrong but not worried, wait and see, and I might actually be wrong. Plus, we're going to look some more at UFC 306, get into some NHL discussion, which I'm sure will not lead to any hotly contested debates or anything like that. And the NBA preview starts with a look at how the Boston Celtics built their championship team. So it is a lot to get to, so let's get to it all and start with today's NFL Power Rankings. It is Power Rankings Day, and instead of just some of those other ones, oh, here's my top 5 and bottom 5. Nah. We do all 32 here. We're running them all down, or building them up, depending on how you want to look at it. So let's start with number 32. We'll work from the bottom and work our way up. This one was easy. It's the Carolina Panthers. I don't know if a football team has ever looked worse than the Carolina Panthers looked on Sunday. The offense was atrocious. The defense was terrible. And it all looks very, very bad. And the major concern is that they have either screwed up Bryce Young to the point of no return, or Bryce Young is just not the guy that they thought he was going to be. Either way, not ideal if you are the Carolina Panthers. And so it is going to take a lot, I think, for me to have the Carolina Panthers not in this spot as the worst team in the league. At number 31, it is the New York Giants. And again, it's the same thing. The offense looked atrocious. The defense looked terrible. And there are, I think, major concerns out there. This was a bit of a wait-and-see year for the Giants anyway. Some would call it a wait-and-see year. I would call it a wasted year with the Giants. You have known for a while that Daniel Jones isn't the guy. But yet, they had to pay him because he had the guy year at a time where they were needing to pay him. Welcome. Toxic. Thanks for stopping by. I was saying before, I think we have the audio sync issue. It looks significantly better on my end. So let me know if the audio sync problems persist. If nothing else, I've deleted a bunch of stuff. It's much better. Fantastic. Also, thank you for the Kick subscription. Or not subscription, sorry, but the follow. I greatly appreciate that. This one is only on Twitch, and I kind of think that's why it's working. So anyway, we'll see. Back to the football breakdown. The Giants are wasting this year, it feels like. Everything is geared now toward them getting an actual quarterback next year. But again, just getting the quarterback isn't going to solve anything. I don't like Daniel Jones. I don't think he's a very good quarterback at all. That being said, they haven't exactly built a great foundation around him. And so the thing I would caution for the Giants, if this is going to go down the route that it looked like it would when they got absolutely whooped on by the Vikings, I would say that I would caution just saying that, look, bringing in the number 1 overall pick or number 2 overall pick as the starting quarterback, great, that's fine. You need to shore up this offensive line and maybe get some weapons for this guy to throw to so Wan'Dale Robinson doesn't end up getting 11 targets for you in a game. At 30, it's the Vegas Raiders. Again, some horrendous coaching decisions. Gardner Minshew looked bad. This team was absolutely shut down by the Chargers defense. Now, I do think the Chargers defense is going to be better than maybe we anticipate, and so there is the potential that a Raider performance like that in this game is maybe not as much the sky is falling in Vegas as I think it might be, and there could absolutely be just some bias on my part and just worried that it's not going to work. But again, just no part of this team looked very good in that game. At 29, it's Washington. At least Jaden Daniels is fun and exciting, but he is definitely one read and go. And even then, it is one read, no, not the most wide open a human has ever been, and go. The offensive line isn't going to give him any help, and the defense is horrendous again this year. So there are concerns out in Washington for sure. At 28, it's New England. They get a win. I don't buy it. I still think this is a bad football team. They just had a nice soft landing spot against a Cincinnati football club that was dealing with a lot of things going on. Off the field, we will say, going into that game. But yeah, I still don't think the Patriots are anything. At 27, it's Cleveland. That's how bad they looked in getting whooped on by the Dallas Cowboys in week 1. And the big concern there is the defense giving up that many points. And I get when you're on the field the whole time, eventually you're going to give up points. And maybe it was me underestimating the Cowboys offense, but I didn't think that they were a put up 30 plus points on the best defense in football type of a team. So worried about the defense, worried again about the offensive line. Funny, all of these teams so far, offensive line issues. And there's the major concern out there that the piece of shit that they signed to play quarterback is also a piece of shit quarterback, not just a piece of shit as a human being. At 26, it's the Denver Broncos. Bo Nix didn't look very good. The defense didn't look very good. Just not a whole lot of redeeming qualities about this football team. At 25, it is the Minnesota Vikings. Oh, thank you, Deeds, for letting me know that the sync is awesome. That is such good news, that it's actually working. This is... Again, we'll get to the ranking stuff in a second. This is the problem with what I did. So just to go a peek behind the curtain, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going full bore into it. So downloaded the plugin to be able to stream on Twitch, Kick, and YouTube all at the same time. Downloaded the plugin for the vertical camera so that could do some social media stuff as well. Not that I'm close to being able to stream live on TikTok, but at least being able to make TikTok clips and stuff like that. And then we go live, and all of a sudden, it's not working, as you guys saw the other day, or even yesterday. So I was like, okay, what are some of these things I could fix? You know what? Let's just get rid of all of it. Let's just bare bones. We know, I know that when I record on here, it works. And I've gone on Twitch, not on this one, but I've gone live on one platform before, and it's worked with Game Over on YouTube. So why am I trying to overshoot things a little bit? So maybe I will slowly start to reintroduce those things, and we will see what the problem was. I do still want to figure out some stuff to do on Kick, but we will get there when we get there. But yes, the stream is working fine, which is fantastic news. And again, Deeds and Toxic, you guys are the best. Even though kind of got whooped on in the Vampire League this week. But I'm not going to hold that against you, because you don't want to give up your players to the Vampire. That is for sure. At 25, in the power rankings here, it's the Minnesota Vikings. They are a team that got to play the New York Giants. Good for them. I don't think this means they are very good. I think they got worse with Jalen Addison going down with an injury. And so I just view this as a team that got to play a worse team in week 1. So congratulations to the Minnesota Vikings. You got a good draw in week 1. It does not get any easier for you in the weeks ahead. So careful. Let's just not get too excited about things with the Minnesota Vikings. But yes, Deeds, Toxic faced me in week 1. He got to be the Minnesota Vikings. Well, we'll see. I think his team's actually pretty good. But he got to be the Minnesota Vikings and just taking on a bad team. And yeah, Deeds with the victory over my wife. So our two main chatters here did not go kindly on the house of Klein and wife this weekend. All right, 24. It's the Chicago Bears. They won. The defense forced some turnovers, so that's good. I don't know if that means that they are really good or if Tennessee's just really bad. Caleb Williams won, but he threw for 96 yards. So I I don't know what we learned from that game, quite frankly. I don't know if we learned that Tennessee sucks. I don't know if we learned that Chicago sucks, but just sucks less than Tennessee, or if Chicago was really good and they were able to just find a way to win. I don't know what we take from that game. And honestly, probably I don't know if I should have Tennessee higher than Chicago, but apparently I do. At 23, it's New Orleans. I anticipate this ranking will change aggressively as the season goes on. I don't think this is very good, a very good football team. The thing that separates them from Minnesota is I view their defense as being a legitimate group. Dennis Allen sucks as a coach, but he's a real good defensive coordinator. And that means that I at least buy into the defensive part of this. Offensively, they're not doing that again, I don't believe at all. At 22, it's the Tennessee Titans. I said coming into the year, I thought this was an improved football team. They did not look like it in the second part of that game against the Chicago Bears. So part of this is just kind of me holding on to trying to be right 2 years in a row on a team that everyone doubted. At 21, it's Arizona. They get a good competitive game with the Buffalo Bills, just not the game that maybe I thought. If they could have stole that one, we would have been well on our way with a Arizona Cardinals over ticket and a sneaky play on Arizona to maybe win that division. Although I said the injury issues could creep up for San Francisco. That didn't seem to slow them down on Monday. At 20, it's Atlanta. Kirk Cousins looked really bad. And so, like, if we were just going to base it off of no prior like biases or anything like that, no prior assumptions, I think Atlanta would be one of the bottom 2 or 3 teams in the league. Like that offensive performance was scary bad. And now we are to assume that Kirk Cousins is just going to get healthier as the season goes on, which in one sense, like maybe as you get further removed from getting a season-ending injury, it should get better. But also, that's just not how football works. Guys tend to get more hurt as the year goes on, not less. So I would have great concerns out in Atlanta. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they come in at 19 again because that defense is legit. And if Justin Fields can continue to come in and help this offense, then all the power to them as well. At 18, it's the Indianapolis Colts, a loss against the Houston Texans, but they hung in there. Anthony Richardson with a really interesting performance. We'll talk about that in the fantasy football conversation we're going to have here in a little bit. At 17, it's Cincinnati. I am still holding out some hope that they are going to be not the dominant team that some people who were picking them to go to the Super Bowl thought, but maybe not the bad team that they looked like in week 1. Again, if this was just based on purely what they looked like in week 1, then this is a team that's in the bottom 5 in the NFL. At 16, Tampa Bay, they beat a bad team, but I thought they'd be okay this year anyway, so they get in at the midway point. At 15, it's the Chargers, probably a little bit too high on a team that I'm not anticipating being able to put up a whole lot of offensive points. But I think that defense is going to be for real. And we talked about the defense in fantasy football yesterday, looking at the waiver wire. They have a great matchup against Carolina this week. At 14, it's the Rams. They were one of the teams that looked so much better than I was expecting. And that's even with Puka Nacua going down with an injury. At 13, the Jacksonville Jaguars. I said coming into the year, I think that this team is getting slept on a little bit. And they are a Travis Etienne fumble away from picking up a really good first week win over the Miami Dolphins. They still have some things to figure out, but I think this is going to be a pretty good team. At 12, it's Seattle. It looked better. Some areas it didn't, but most areas it did. Now, you didn't get the toughest test against the Denver Broncos, so that's that, and we fully understand that. Seattle this week, trying to scroll through very, very quickly, which never works for me. Seattle this week gets the New England Patriots. So I don't know how much of a read we're going to get on Seattle coming out of that game either, but we will see. At 11, it's the Jets. I still don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be the one to lead this team to the promised land. I think there are real concerns about that defense getting gashed by a backup running back in week 1, but they still have one of the better rosters in the NFL, and so I still think you have to take them at least the littlest bit seriously coming into this one. At 10, it's the Buffalo Bills. We will see them coming up tomorrow night as they take on the Miami Dolphins. They pick up a win. Josh Allen is Superman. I worry about him needing to be Superman week in and week out. With the arm, we kind of expected, but that was a lot of running and a lot of him getting beat up, and that is just not going to be something they can do throughout the entirety of this season. It's just not. At 9, it's Green Bay. Probably would have had them higher had they won, but that's kind of how these work. But also, I think I would have had them higher if Jordan Love's knee hadn't almost exploded out there. Malik Willis is a bad quarterback. I don't, and the thing is, this is what I don't get. I would understand if you were Washington, or if you were like a Baltimore, or someone else with a mobile quarterback. Malik Willis, I think, works there. But it just, you have to change up the offense so much from Jordan Love to him. I would, if I were running an NFL franchise, and I feel like at this point that's probably out the window for me, I kind of want my backup quarterback to be very similar to what I have as the regular quarterback. So if Jordan Love is throwing a pass and the top of his body goes right and the bottom goes left, then you can still, you at least have someone who you can just kind of plant into the offense. But Love and Willis aren't really the same type of a quarterback. And obviously, like, the difference is, like, one's a good quarterback and one's a bad quarterback. But there's also stylistic differences. And so I don't really love that. So that's just a whatever. Like, it's popped up a little bit in Winnipeg when they went from Zach Collaros to Strevler. The offense is significantly different for what you can do with a Collaros and with a Strevler. Same thing with the Argos when they went from Chad Kelly to Cameron Dukes. Like, Kelly hasn't done great in a couple of weeks, but he is someone you have a full regular football playbook for. Dukes, they tried to run that and it didn't work because it's not him. He's a very good mobile quarterback and you need to take advantage of that. And so this is a roster construction lesson for all of you out there. At number 8, it is the Dallas Cowboys. Boy, they looked good against Cleveland. But again, I think a lot of that is Cleveland, and very little of that is Dallas. So we will see how that goes on. At 7, it's Miami. I know that there was some concern about how they looked against Jacksonville. I still think that it's week 1. You don't want to read too much into these things. I still think they are going to be a good team on both sides of the football. I just think that it's week 1. You're kind of getting everything set. Your best player and new defensive player got arrested before the game in what has to be something that wears on people mentally, given the nature of that and everything that played out with that. So I'm going to give Miami a bit of a mulligan on that one. At 6, it is the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, they lost, but I thought they played a really, really good football game on Thursday night against Kansas City. At 5, it's the Houston Texans, again with a bit of a complete performance against the Indianapolis Colts, so you feel pretty good about how all of that went down. At 4, it is the Detroit Lions. Again, I have them as a Super Bowl contender and a team that I think people need to be very, very wary of. And I think this is a complete team. And I think Jameson Williams unlocks something in this offense that they didn't have last year. And I think if they can have a legitimate defense, then this is a team that should be competing for the Super Bowl in February. At 3, it's Philadelphia. They won against a good team while kind of playing badly in certain instances, but there are so many parts of their game that I liked. I just had to put them up there. At 2, it's San Francisco. To get a win over a team that I have ranked in the top 12 is a really good sign, I think, and is absolutely... It shows that you can do this even with no Christian McCaffrey. That was really impressive what they did. And my concern about San Francisco isn't in the first few weeks of the season. My concern is the injury luck that they had last year. It just felt like everyone was banged up in training camp. Will those things linger throughout the season? Obviously, they didn't on Monday night, but now how will they throughout the year? But for now, it's a talented football team that looked like a talented football team and beating another talented football team, so I gotta have them high. And at number 1, it's Kansas City. Like 5 plays into that game on Thursday night, it just kind of felt like, oh shit, this is not over, because there's a lot of really good teams in the NFL. But boy, oh boy, does this feel not like that. This feels like the best team in the league. This doesn't feel like last year where, well, they have Mahomes and that defense is good, so you got to take them seriously. And then in the playoffs, they just turn into a juggernaut again. This is oh my God. I don't know how you beat these guys. I get like your backup tight end goes off. That's how you beat them. But like Pacheco running like a madman was great. And Worthy and Rashee Rice are just beasts. And they won and put up good points against a good defense with Travis Kelce doing fuck all. And that defense looks really, really good. So I do think that Kansas City is the best team in the league. And like 8 guys are going to have to get hurt for me to not think that right now. Back in the chat, Deeds, no McCaffrey or Ayuk. He did nothing in that game. That is very fair. A very quiet performance from Brandon Ayuk. And that is honestly a good, maybe a good reason why I should have the Jets a little bit lower than I do. This was weird. Like I put Seattle in my top half. Just initially, just writing the teams down. And then I kept putting them ahead of teams. And it's like, I like Seattle. I don't think I like Seattle enough to put them as the 12th best team in the league. I didn't think I would have Seattle in a spot where if this was the college football playoff committee, they'd be in. And so it's weird. I just said, Kansas City, I'm not going to say, oh, it's them versus everyone else, because there's a lot of good teams. And there are. But there's also quite a few really bad teams and a lot of mid. And I guess I just described how leagues work. But, there isn't a whole lot of, oh, shit going on. There's a lot of are they? Aren't they? Yeah, we'll see. Also, one more note here on the week 1 thing, on the Ayuk and some of that other stuff. This was a weird week 1, and I think we're going to continue to get week 1s like this. I kind of feel like we did this whole thing last year. As teams play less and less in the preseason, week 1 is going to get sloppier and sloppier, right? You have the rookies who look pretty good in the preseason. Turns out they were playing former or future Foot Locker employees. There isn't a whole lot that's going on out there. They're basically playing backups and recently drafted players. And just by design, we know they're good against recently drafted players. That's why they were drafted in the first round, because they're better than the recently drafted players, right? So how it works is those guys are going to look good in those games. Now they're playing against real coverages, real schemes, real players, and it's not looking as good. That doesn't mean they're going to suck. It just means this is now another level that they haven't played at, and they can't even ease into it because no one takes the preseason seriously. Same thing, all these teams that didn't play their starters in the preseason at all, this is their first real live football since, for some, February, for others, January, and for most, December. So it's tough to really get into that groove. And so I do think that there is going to be, it's a difficult balance to try to figure out, okay, was this team just sloppy in week 1? Was this team or is this team just bad? How do we figure this out? And so that's why I kind of break it down the way I do with the, I just had the DX thing, the break it down. But that's why I break it down into the 4 categories. And part of it is that's how a lot of people view it as well. For Miami, they didn't look good. They didn't look all that good. But Peter Klein, assume they're going to be good at some point, and think they are going to win this division this year. So I can write it off as, it's week 1. It's, they didn't play, guys got arrested. It's whatever. But then you have a team who we expected to be bad in Carolina or the Giants or the Raiders, and they come out and they look bad in week 1. And it's, oh yeah, see, dog shit football team. And so our willingness to give the, it's week 1 excuse to teams bases almost entirely on what we thought about them coming into the season. Now, we all do have eyeballs, and we saw just how badly Carolina and the Giants play. I guess I shouldn't assume we all have eyeballs, but working under the assumption most of us did. Or at least you have eyes or ears, so you can either see it or have it described to you in terms of a radio broadcast. But either way, we know how those teams looked. And so there is a lot of the eye test, but a lot of, it's a weird balance to figure out. So trying to not overreact to 1 week here in the NFL. With that in mind, fantasy football is all about overreacting. It's the best part of it, really. And so I thought it would be a good time to just break down what we saw from some of the players in week 1 in the same way we did from the actual NFL week 1. So let's get into a bit of fantasy talk here. Fantasy football is all about panicking. And so everyone has a lot to panic about after week one, but some people have some celebrating to do as well. And so, in the spirit of what we did on Monday, breaking the teams into 4 categories, I thought I would break down some of the fantasy football performances from week one into 4 categories. So, we have broken them up into confirmation bias. We have wrong, but I'm not worried. We have, well, I'll wait and see. And we have, I might just have been wrong on that one. And so we'll start with the positive, because your boy likes a boost, and go with the confirmation. And the very first one was Jameson Williams. I don't know if he is going to be 5, yeah. I don't know if he is going to be if he's going to be 5 receptions for 112 yards and a touchdown every week, or if he's going to be more Deshaun Jackson, where he just kind of pops in, has a big game, and then for 3 weeks, you don't see him. I don't know if he is going to be that, but I have said for so long, talent is not an issue with this kid. If he can stay on the field and just have a regular season, he is going to be really, really good, and especially in this offense. And this is the thing that this offense has been missing for so long, is a big play threat over the top. Their big plays were... their big plays were Amon-Ra St. Brown gets a quick pass, and because he is also a quick human being, he just kind of through everyone, and he ends up getting big plays. I do have a bit of a concern about him. I don't think I have him in any of these categories. I didn't think that Jameson Williams' success would come at the expense of Amon-Ra St. Brown. I thought it would kind of just unlock something different in this offense, but Amon-Ra was really limited in week one against the LA Rams, and Jameson wasn't. He was everything I thought he would be. This is the exact scenario that I thought Jameson Williams would thrive in, and as one of my kind of sleeper picks of the year, I am so happy with how he looked in week one. Rashee Rice as well. As the mock draft season went on, and if you missed it, I did a mock draft from every spot in a 12-team draft. As the drafts went on, we were getting closer and closer to the regular season, and it was like, okay, it's looking like this kid ain't going to get suspended for all the stuff he did in the offseason. And he's pretty good, and he's Patrick Mahomes' number 1 receiver. So we need to start moving this guy up a little bit, and was able to get him in a couple of leagues, and he looks like he is a legitimate number 1 wide receiver. Now, not every team is going to be able to be just assaulted over the middle like the Baltimore Ravens were in that game, but I don't know how much Cincinnati is going to provide resistance in that area either. So that's going to be very interesting. Saquon Barkley is another one. You knew the talent going in. I do think that they are... I do think they kind of highlighted him a little bit in this one to just like really drive home what they were looking to do, but you know how good he can be, and you know how good that offensive line can be, and so I think he really balled out in a way that I think is going to be sustainable. I felt so good about a few of my running back picks. We'll lump them all in here. Joe Mixon, J.K. Dobbins, and Jerome Ford. All guys who were being drafted after the 4th round, in Ford and Dobbins' case, significantly after. And you were looking, like Mixon, there isn't a whole lot of competition there, and he's still fine. Like, I think the second that a running back gets cut, it's, oh yeah, all downhill from, oh, remember Sean Alexander, how good he was, and then he was, remember that? Oh yeah, no, it's all, this guy is the next Jamal Charles. It's just going to fall off. It's like, he's not 30 yet, you know? And I do, like, that works out for a lot of guys, but some of these guys are just elite athletes, and they're going to figure it out. Like, I think that course correction is coming a little bit. And Joe Mixon really showed it up. He is still a good player in a good offense. J.K. Dobbins, it's a little bit of the Jameson Williams part. Jameson Williams missed a whole bunch of time because he's an idiot. J.K. Dobbins did because his body let him down. And so I think that is a player that is going to continue to have these types of weeks and continue to be like the guy for the LA Chargers. And Jerome Ford, I was saying it for a while. Jerome Ford is a good running back who is the number 1 option on a team. Now, he's a good running back who's the number 1 option on a team. That offense sucks and the offensive line sucks, but he at least is going to get some options. And look at that, he got his way into the end zone, because sometimes good players can just outplay bad situations. B. McDizzle, 22. Rice and Worthy, how do you think that will be affected with Hollywood coming back? I don't think it will be affected all that much. I'm not a big Hollywood guy. And so I don't think I don't think you see what Kansas City did with Worthy in week 1, with Rice in week 1, and think, okay, well, Hollywood Brown is going to take something away from those guys. I just don't see it. Like there's possibly going to be a little less opportunity for one of them. And honestly, I don't think it affects Worthy all that much. Like those passes over the middle I don't think it'll affect Rice all that much. Those passes over the middle that he was getting, I think those are going to be his, basically. I do think that the Worthy stuff, you do have to watch it a little bit, given the similarities between him and Hollywood Brown. I think a lot of what Worthy is going to be is busting it downfield and trying to take the top off of a defense. And if the defense is going to, no, we're not going to worry about that, and still kind of collapse down on Brown and Rice, then Worthy's going to have a good day over the top. And if teams are going to continue in that too high shell and just stay back and back and back and back and back, Rice is going to get his underneath, and I do think Hollywood is going to get some underneath as well. But I think those two are still going to be kind of the focal points of this offense, and Brown is going to be a bit more of the wide receiver 3 with that team. So I don't think Rice and Worthy get affected too much by that. All right, next category. Wrong but not worried. Derek Carr. I absolutely did not see that type of performance from Derek Carr at any point this season. And so I am absolutely just chalking it up to it was week 1 against a very, very bad defense in Carolina. I think bad days are still ahead for Carr. I have Tua on here. This one is maybe a bit more of a real life football one than anything else, but I thought it would look a little bit better. And as I mentioned before, it's week 1. Preseason was what it was, or wasn't what it wasn't. And I do think that he is going to still have some good days and still be able to provide some good fantasy days for other people in this offense. Stephon Diggs had a very good opportunity to put up some fantasy points for the Houston Texans. He puts up 2 touchdowns. I was avoiding Stephon Diggs. I thought, it's like the Hollywood Brown conversations. Yeah, we know him. He's the wide receiver 3 here. And I still think he is the wide receiver 3 here. Now, the touchdown volume is absolutely something that is like, oh boy, if he's just their red zone target, that's going to be a really good job for him because they're going to be in the red zone a lot, and he is still kind of good at catching the football. If he can just get open in short space, that's going to be something I wasn't overly anticipating. So I still don't think Stephon Diggs is going to have a very good year this year. I still think the order you want the pass catchers with the Houston Texans is Nico Collins, Tank Dell, and Stephon Diggs. I just think Diggs' good day was bolstered by a couple of touchdowns, but it's at least on the radar a little bit. Chase Brown, I thought he'd have more opportunities with Cincinnati. And now it was a weird game for the Bengals as I don't know if they were anticipating the resistance they got from the New England Patriots. I'm certain they didn't expect to lose that game. And so I still think that there is going to be opportunities to come. And again, we didn't draft Chase Brown thinking that he'd be the guy in week 1. I think we drafted Chase Brown with the understanding that over time, he was going to show that he was the better running back in that situation, and he is going to get his, so to speak. So I still think that there are going to be good days ahead for Chase Brown. And the last one was Jaylen Warren. He didn't have much of a game in this one. And you got worried about the injury. And so that's why we kind of started avoiding him late in the mock draft process. But I do think that he is still going to be a valuable part of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense as he gets a little bit healthier and as they start to work him in a little bit more. So I'm not too worried about that. The wait and see. These are ones where I think I was a little bit wrong on it. And I'm not fully changing my opinion yet, but I have at least started to remove the case of the panic button a little bit. And the first is Anthony Richardson. I didn't think that we would just turn him into what everyone thought Jamarcus Russell was going to be, where he's going to run a bunch and just throw it 1,002 yards down the field. You would like to see a few more completions, and I want to see a few more completions before I fully admit that maybe I was a little bit wrong in drafting some other quarterbacks ahead of him. But I'm at least noting how aggressive he was in pushing the ball down the field. And again, in a week 1 where maybe timing is a little bit off on some certain things, a couple of those deep ones hit to Adonai Mitchell, and all of a sudden it's a big week. And so I can't, in all good conscience, put out Adonai Mitchell as a fantasy football waiver wire suggestion while then also saying, yeah, but Anthony Richardson ain't going to be shit. Because, well, he's missing those deep passes, but he just missed the deep passes to Adonai. He's getting those targets, right? So I do think I have to be maybe a little bit more of a believer in Anthony Richardson. Kyler Murray only getting 14.5 fantasy points against Buffalo's defense. That was supposed to be one of the games where he just locked on and off they go and just dominated, right? So, and put up some really big fantasy points, kind of setting the tone for the season. He didn't do that. 14.5 fantasy points. He was a better real life quarterback than he was a fantasy quarterback. And that is concerning to me a little bit with changes that have been made to the offense and young weapons being brought in. I think we all just kind of assumed Marvin Harrison was going to be amazing from from day one. And it's going to take time to build up that kind of rapport with the young receiver. So that one was a bit of a, oh shit, this might be a bit more of a work in progress than I thought it was going to be. Jackson Smith and Jigba. He was one of the ones that we said in the middle part of the draft, we want two of JSN, Christian Watson, and Jamison Williams. And that started to expand to include Brian Thomas with Jacksonville and Jerome Ford with the Cleveland Browns at running back. We wanted a couple of those guys in there. And JSN was kind of the one we always ended up having to draft first because of where the ADP went. He wasn't looked at all in this game. And the thought coming in was a new offensive philosophy where the pace is going to be picked up a little bit more. And so they're just going to run more plays, so he's going to have more opportunities. They also used him almost exclusively in the slot last year, and that is not his bag at all. And so I thought there would be maybe a bit more of an adjustment in his role, but it all looked the same in week one. I do think they ran more plays, but his role looked the same. And so if nothing else, this could go into the I think I might just be wrong category, because I think it is again going to be DK Metcalf gets his, and then it's a toss-up between Lockett and JSN. And I thought it was going to veer a little bit more on the JSN side of things, but I thought all three would be able to feed in that offense. And week one against the Denver Broncos defense that has like one good player on it, I do have some concerns now that this maybe is just going to be the way it is. And that's the difficult part, again, about predicting changes in philosophy and changes in roles with teams, is that those can take some time. And so when you don't see it right away, it's tough to say, no. This thing that we've never seen before is actually going to happen. Ignore the fact that that one game looked like the 17 from the season before. Ignore that because the change is coming. It's a weird thing to try to double down on. And so, admittedly, I'm having a difficult time with it. Devontae Adams is up next. I thought at least Gardner Minshew would be able to get the ball to Devontae Adams and he was going to be able to put up fantasy points. One thing I did not anticipate is that the putting up of fantasy points was not going to include touchdowns ever for the Vegas Raiders. And so I just said, like, this is why you kind of look at sometimes talent over situation. Situations matter. And Devontae Adams is in a bad one. So, because I was drafting him as a wide receiver 1 in a lot of spots when you went running back in the first round, or if you just went with a bit more of a 0 RB type of approach, I was absolutely taking him as a wide receiver 2, but he's a second round pick that did not produce as a second round pick. And again, it looked a whole lot like the offense we saw last year, which is very concerning for Devontae Adams. And the last one was Tyjae Spears. I thought that he was going to look so clearly better than Tony Pollard that he was, by the end of the season, going to basically be the bell cow back out in Tennessee. One thing I said, I think it was an honorable mention in the things I'm worried I'm wrong about portion. There's just this thing in the back of my head that was like, you know what? Maybe Tony Pollard being bullshit in Dallas last year was more about Tony Pollard recovering from injury and now a full season removed from that. Maybe he gets a little bit better in these spots. And he looked like the far superior running back in week 1. And that concerned me quite a bit because the bank on this one was on the talent of Tyjae Spears. And that didn't win out. B McDizzle 22. What do you think about a trade worthy for DK? DK, that's very interesting. Boy, like, I know I just said I'm confident in the fact that Worthy is going to get his, but I think if you can, I'm assuming because this is 2 Worthy asks in a row, that you are the Worthy owner in this one. I think if you can turn Worthy into DK Metcalf. It's more reliable options. Like, yes, you are downgrading significantly in the talent of the offense, but DK Metcalf is, I think, like Seattle's offense, you know that the running backs are kind of going to be maybe a little bit more split than we thought. And you know, one game it's going to be Lockett, one game maybe it's going to be JSN. But the thing you know for sure is DK Metcalf is getting his. And so to be able to lock in a guy that talented, I think it's just maybe a little bit more of a safer play for me. So I would trade Worthy for DK Metcalf. I would, yes. I think there are like maybe some circumstances where maybe you wouldn't. Like if your team is built like a juggernaut, and you just need some reliable points, I would go DK. If your team is kind of like mine in the Vampire League that we're doing with some of the some of our friends here in the Twitch stream, and you need maybe just a couple home run swings because your team is 20 points behind everyone weekly in the projections, then Worthy is a good play. So I think if your team, quite frankly, if your team really sucks and you need maybe a big boost, I would go with I would go with Xavier Worthy there, but I think for the most part I would want DK Metcalf over Worthy for the rest of the season. Things I'm worried I might just be wrong on. Jalen Hurts, he looked bad in that game. Now he is helped by the fact that the offensive line is great, and he is helped by the fact that he has incredible talent around him. But some of those decisions were horrendous. And when you see how they collapsed last year, and you just kind of explain away like, well, there was this, there was that, there was all these things going on. It looked again kind of the same as it did at the end of last year. And that song and dance did not end very well. Now, I didn't have any Jalen Hurts coming into this year. And so I don't, maybe part of the I'm worried I'm wrong is I'm worried that, like, I still think that this offense maybe is going to have some issues, but I do think that there is going to be, there are going to be weeks where he puts up numbers because the rest of the offense is just amazing. And so I do think that it is, this one maybe should have been just in the wait and see, but the decision making from Hurts really concerned me. And that's something at this point in his career now, given the experience he has, that should go away. I am giving him the slightest mulligan because the turf in Brazil was bad, and that can just kind of mess with someone's brain a little bit. So we will wait on that. Matthew Stafford's another one. I thought that Stafford was going to age out, and that was going to provide diminishing returns for everyone in this offense. He looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and that is, I think, big for Cooper Kupp, for when Nakua comes back for B. McDizzle there, and for the running game as well, and for the tight ends that we said you should pick up now. Matthew Stafford being better, not only is something that I think is going to shift how I view their fantasy options, but kind of how I view the Rams in the NFL. I had them as a play to miss the playoffs this year, and then in the power rankings, if you're watching the whole show, they came in at 14. So I might already be shifting things a little bit here. I think I was wrong on the Jaden Reed, Christian Watson thing. I just felt like Watson has a lot of the talents that Reed has in a bit of a bigger frame, and he just kind of looks more like a number one wide receiver. But then you see the elite attributes that it looks like Reed has, and it feels like I kind of bet on the wrong horse there. I still think Watson is going to return the value that I had for him in those 7th, 8th, 9th rounds that we were getting when we were getting him in fantasy football drafts. But I don't know if he is going to be one of those league winners that I thought he was going to be, where you draft him there, and then by week 5, it's like, fuck, I know I drafted this guy in the 3rd round, but I can't not play Christian Watson right now, so we have to make a move here. I thought he was going to be that, and I was a little concerned with what I saw in week 1, and I think I'm just wrong, because Jaden Reed looks now, and again, 1 week on weird turf, but Jaden Reed looked like the most talented wide receiver on that team, and I now think that may pull ahead as it goes along. Yeah, Crash, we got it worked out. I was explaining before when I decided to go live with these. I was like, all right, we're doing it big the whole way. We're gonna stream on multiple platforms. I'm gonna have a vertical cam here that I'm gonna be able to set up social media stuff on. It's gonna be perfect. And then after a couple of streams, I was like, why? Let's make sure it works first, and then let's expand. So we're only on Twitch today, but we are working, and it's great. So that is That is fantastic. And then a couple of running backs I'm worried that I might be wrong on. Troy Pollard and Rico Dowdle. Pollard, like I said, I just thought he was going to be the second best running back in Tennessee. And so his stock was going to continue to drop and drop and drop. And I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. A little worried about that. A little worried that he's just going to be the guy out in Tennessee. And Rico Dowdle, I thought he was going to be the guy for the Dallas Cowboys, and Ezekiel Elliott wasn't going to be able to do a whole lot. And through 1 week, Zeke's getting a whole lot more of the looks, and Rico Dowdle is just kind of there. And so this was more a bet on the situation than the talent, which I don't always love doing. But I thought as we were getting down to the end of the draft that it wasn't going to be a big killer. But it does really feel like he is kind of just a guy. Crash, great to hear that the TikTok was working today. I know we were chatting offline, well, I guess online, but different platform, chatting on X about that. So happy you were able to get that to work. And thanks for letting me kind of talk out my technical woes with you in the DMs. And also thanks, Deeds, going out and like finding different suggestions and all of that. That really helped get us close to on track yesterday, and then we got there today. So the tech support in the chat, as always, very, very helpful. I did see Deeds asked this one before. I have worry about Dalton Kincaid, targeted twice with 1 catch. That is one for sure. And maybe just tight end in general, all of them looked a little bit off last in week 1. Like none of the main guys really put up big numbers, but the Dalton Kincaid one is very concerning because it was 2 tight ends a lot of the time, and it looked for Kincaid like the 2 tight end sets last year, and that meant a whole lot of him not getting the football. So yes, I think he is a talented player, and I think there are going to be games where he gets it, but to only get 2 targets in a game where they put up 34 points, I have real worry about that. I don't think you're sitting him. And I don't think, like, we gave out a couple tight end options on the waiver wire yesterday, or maybe we only gave out 1. Yeah, like Likely and Colby Parkinson. If you were able to get one of those, like maybe you consider sitting Kincaid this week, but I kind of think where you drafted him, you kind of got to play him. So yeah, these fantasy football discussions on the live shows have been great so far. Love that the questions are coming in. So we will definitely keep that going throughout the season. But it is time for us to shift our attention now to the Ultimate Fighting Championship as the UFC takes over the Sphere this weekend. On Monday, we looked at the main event fighters that we are and the storylines around them and what we're watching. But what about the other fighters? I'm going to give you guys 5 fighters to watch at UFC 306 that I'm a little intrigued by when they fight at UFC Noche. UFC Noche, presented by Riyadh Season. It makes sense to them, I guess, is coming to you from the Sphere this weekend. And there are a few fighters that are very intriguing on this card outside of the main event that features Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili, along with Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. The first one, it's always funny. I'm like, you know what? We got some fighters outside of the co-main and the main event that you need to watch for. So in the fight, the third from the top, it feels like I'm kind of playing you a little bit, but I promise we got some deeper cuts as it goes along. But I am very intrigued by this third fight on the main card as Diego Lopez takes on Brian Ortega. Lopez is a really interesting prospect. He's won 4 in a row. He had a run of 3 straight first round knockouts end with a unanimous decision win. And you can explain away he needed all 15 minutes because it was, I think, clearly the best fighter that he's fought in his career with Dan Ige. His last 2 wins are against Sadiq Youssef and Dan Ige. Those are real legitimate fighters. So yes, this is a gigantic step up in competition for Lopez as he is going up against Brian Ortega, a former title challenger in this division. But I don't think it's a step up that is unwarranted. And I am really, really interested to see what he kind of brings. I feel like this is a chance to fully solidify him as one of the next ones coming in this division. And for Ortega, he had that status for a while, and it paid off for the most part. Like, he's getting title challenges and fighting in really big fights. He just happened to fight in the time of Max Holloway and Alex Volkanovski. But I think still showed that there's something there. He had lost 3 of his last 4 before he beat Yair Rodriguez in his last bout. But those 3 were against Rodriguez, Alex Volkanovski, and Max Holloway. I would suggest to you, most human beings on Earth are losing to those three fighters. And most fighters are going to lose to those three guys. So a loss in that stretch just means you are not in the top 2 or 3 in this division. The issue is Lopez might be. In terms of talent-wise. Like, he legitimately could be that guy. And so for Ortega, this is a fight to kind of keep your spot a little bit. Because we already had, like, okay, yeah, they've split now 1-1, but it does kind of feel like Yair's maybe a little bit over him. You have Volka's ahead of him. You have Holloway is ahead of him. Topuria has kind of jumped the line over top of him. Well, not kind of, he's the fucking champion. But you've had these guys, and Ortega, who was at the top for a while, has just kind of ticked down a little bit each time he has fought. And now this is another guy who is looking to come and take that spot. If Ortega wants to have one more run at a championship, I'm not going to say it's a must win, because quite frankly, good looking dude, put him on a poster anytime, people are going to watch. So he has a marketability around him that helps. But in terms of legitimately being a title challenger and not just being 2 wins and a pretty face away from being a title challenger, but actually, like, talent-wise being there, I think you need this win. I think he desperately needs this win. And it is a really good kind of placement to see where is Lopez right now. And even a loss here doesn't mean that he's never going to be that guy. It just means that maybe there is a bit more seasoning and we didn't need to skip the on-ramp from between Ortega and Aden Ige. Irene Aldana taking on Norma Dumont. Aldana looking to build back up into a title fight. She lost to Amanda Nunes, but again, who wouldn't? She comes back with a win over Carol Rosa in her last bout. Her last 3 losses have come to Nunes, Holm, and Pennington. So similar to Ortega, that is no knock. Again, most people are losing to those fighters. It just means, again, you're not necessarily in that upper echelon. And I don't view Dumont as someone who is in there, but she's getting there. She's on a 4-fight winning streak. She just won her return to the bantamweight division against Germaine de Randamie. These are 2 top 10 fighters in the women's bantamweight division. And that is a division that feels very wide open right now. And so I think there is an opportunity for the winner of this fight, if they look impressive, either one of them. Aldana's 5, Dumont's 8. So, admittedly, Dumont, it would take a little bit more. But if they look really impressive, I do think that the winner of this could have a title fight as their next fight, just given how wide open this division is right now. So a really, really important fight for a couple of fighters who are working their way up in this division right now. For Dumont for the first time, and for Aldana trying to do it again after getting a title opportunity against Amanda Nunes. And the last one, the last fighter I'm looking at, and sincere apologies that I'm about to butcher this name, but Yasmin God damn it, I practiced it before. Yargui. An interesting prospect. She's won 3 of 4 in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Her only loss was a 20-second knockout, which, like, on the one hand, if I knocked someone out in 20 seconds, I would argue that nothing is more definitive than only needing 20 seconds to separate someone from their consciousness. That, especially someone who's trying to not get knocked out, like is someone who is trained specifically into not getting hit in the head so much that they get knocked out. So I would consider that a exclamation mark type of a victory. If I got knocked out in 20 seconds, I would say I was a lucky punch or kick or whatever. So you are trying to prove that is a fluke, but still, this is a 25-year-old who has 3 wins in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, 1 knockout loss, but she bounces back from that with a win. She has also before won the Combate Global 3-fight tournament, which happened in Miami. But it was an interesting tournament. It wasn't like back in the UFC tournament days where, oh, wow, they fought for 45 minutes. They were 1-round fights. It was she won 1 fight by unanimous decision after 5 minutes. So when I say, oh, wow, she won a 3-fight tournament in one night to win this tournament, let's not assume she fought for 45 minutes. I think she fought for 10 the entirety of the night. But still, a good fighter and an intriguing prospect here in this division. Going up against Ketlin Souza, former flyweight champion in Invicta. This could be an interesting moment for, we'll say, Yasmin, who I think has an opportunity here to really make a name for herself on a very interesting stage at the Sphere. Right now, she is slated in on the first portion of the prelims, which I don't know why they divide them into, like, well, this is the Fight Pass prelims. And these are the other prelims, and now this is the main event, because it's all on the same streaming service now, right? But semantics. Anyway, those are 5 fighters that I'm really, really interested in when the UFC takes over the Sphere this weekend. But as I mentioned before, the real star of the weekend is the Sphere. So I'm just so excited to see how that plays out. All right. Let's get some debate going. It is time to continue the NHL preview. Over the last couple of days, we have looked at what we learned from last year. This is going to be one of the last what did we learn. And the thing that we learned is who are the best players in the league. Because today, and these lists, I'm assuming I'm just going to go 10 for 10. You guys are going to love it. Today's list, the top 10 players in the National Hockey League this season. So, I'm sure I'm not going to anger anyone with any of these opinions. Let's get into it. Who doesn't love a good list? The NHL preview continues as we look at the top 10 players in the NHL this season. These always get good debates going. So if you very aggressively disagree with me in the comment section, by all means, let me have it. But I'm really interested in your guys' thoughts on these. So let's get right into it. Coming in at number 10, it is Artemi Panarin. I think this guy has all the talent in the world. There was a touch of a fall off in the playoffs for the Rangers, and that worries me about putting him here slightly. But you look at what the true marking of like top players is, and one of the things is makes those around you better. Who hasn't gotten better from playing with Artemi Panarin? Mika Zibanejad's career turned around by playing with Panarin, and now Zibanejad is making guys around him better. But you put some of the kids with Panarin, and all of a sudden Lafreniere is taken off, and I'm not saying that's the reason why, but it just, anyone who plays with Panarin gets better. He has unbelievable sense of the ice. He has a really good scoring touch as well. The one thing he hasn't done is proven that he can be the best player on a championship team, and I do think that window is kind of closing with the Rangers a little bit, but this is still, I think, legitimately one of the best players in the world. At 9, I have Nikita Kucherov. He still has a bomb of a shot, but I do think that just assuming that he is a similar to a 43-year-old Alex Ovechkin, where all he does is just spam one-timers the whole time, that is incorrect. This is a guy who, again, has a very good playmaking sense, that knows for the net, plays a competitive physical style as well, just does all the things you want your star player to do. And again, you have proof of concept. He's done it in the playoffs a bunch. Tampa Bay is going to be relying on him more this season, if that's possible. With Steven Stamkos gone, yes, they brought in Gensel. As the previews go along, you will come to find that I view that as a not insignificant downgrade. So I think that there's going to be a lot riding on Nikita Kucherov this season, and I think he's going to be able to perform, but he comes in at number 9 on our list. At number 8, it is Sidney Crosby. You still have to put him on this list. And honestly, maybe I have him a little bit too low based off of how great he was last season. I think you put him on any of the teams represented in the top part of this list, and he would have like 170 billion points. Like he is that good. Has he fallen off a little bit? Maybe a touch, but he is still, again, just everything you want your star player to be in terms of making those around you better. And just, he also has the ability that maybe Panarin lacks a little bit, that Kucherov has certainly shown, but that the other guys on this list definitely have as well, where it's just, it is late in the game and it's just like, hey, you know what? I've decided we're not losing today. And Crosby basically did that for 2 months with a really bad Pittsburgh team. So he absolutely deserves to be on this list as a top 10 player in the NHL. At 7, Quinn Hughes. I think he was severely underrated going into last year. Maybe this year he gets a little bit overrated, but I had to put him on this list. When you look at the skating ability that he has, the work in his own end is a work in progress for sure. But they have found a chemistry with him with a couple of guys, and you can see that the comfort that he has. His sense in the offensive zone is so good. His use of his skating ability to create just a little bit of space in offense and then create some better angles to either get a shot away or create opportunities for others, both very strong. And so I do think that Quinn Hughes is someone that deserves to be on this list. and provides a real opportunity for the Canucks to be good again this season. At 6, it's Austin Matthews. Again, big body who can skate and put the puck in the net. The playoffs be damned. This is still, I think, one of the best players in the league. His combination of skating, hands, touch around the net, all of those things. Like, he is a big dude who can play like a big dude, but also can play like a teeny little dude. Is something that is quite impressive to me. And we can say all we want about the lack of success in Toronto, and holy fuck is it funny, but I do think that Austin Matthews is someone who is still legitimately one of the best players in the world. At 5, Matthew Tkachuk. Sorry, Flames fans, but we have to put Matthew Tkachuk on this list. I don't know how far down we would have to go to put a Calgary Flame on this list, but it is, I would say, significantly further down the 10th. Matthew Tkachuk is just so good, and we finally saw it put together in the playoffs. I know he kind of had a bit of a reputation as being a playoff performer, but if you watched him here in Calgary, he kind of wasn't. Like, he would get, he could be, he absolutely could be, but there would be times where he would kind of get caught up in just like, hey, it's the playoffs, I'm going to get under their skin. And it was his sole purpose in life was to be a fuck. And all he wanted to do was just be an absolute little prick. And it took him out of the play a lot in some of those series. And I think really hindered Calgary when they needed less of that and a little bit more of like, hey, we don't know what the fuck we're doing. Can you just 2 hands on the wheel and guide us here? Because you have that play style that we need. He has figured that out in Florida. His playmaking ability is excellent. He has some of the best hockey IQ in the league, I think, in terms of how he is able to see the ice and how he is able to kind of manipulate things out there. He has a big body that he can go out into all of the hard areas and help create some opportunities. And then the skill to immediately transition into, I have just bullied the puck away from you, and now we are going to get this. He has creativity on offense, which you love, and he has a really good scoring touch. He checks a lot of the boxes that you would like. And also, like, it was when he was playing with Backlund and Frolik, so, you know, it was what it was, but he can be pretty good in his own end as well. I think waiting until about a few minutes into the why Matthew Tkachuk is the best player in the league to mention his defense, I think is appropriate, but I do think that you can kind of trust him in your own end to a certain degree. At number 4, it's Cale Makar. He's the best defenseman in the National Hockey League. He does everything. I know the default when you see a guy who is out there skating really, really well, is to assume that it's Erik Karlsson or one of those guys that, oh yeah, what's he doing in his own end? He is really good in his own end. He and Devon Toews are so clearly the best defensive duo in the National Hockey League, and they, I think, really do give you a sense of calm when they are out there. And like, I will never forget, Colorado was playing Edmonton. I'm pretty sure it was Edmonton. I might be wrong on this one. So maybe I will forget. But there was a play that he had. I am 99% sure it was McDavid who was racing down the ice past him. And he, not that I think he is 100% like the same skater that he and McDavid are. And if they skated for 20 years, neither of them would get ahead of each other in a marathon or anything like that. But when he's busting it, he can get back at there and break that up. And so he has been the real example of the evolution of the defender in the National Hockey League, where it's not just, I'm big Chris Pronger and I got long reach and you can't get past. It's no longer that. And it's no longer, oh, this guy, he's rail thin and he just skates really well, but he has a good shot from the blue line, so we put him as a defenseman. That doesn't work. He has evolved this position to the point where you can use this skating now as a defensive weapon, as both a transition defense thing to limit opportunities, but also in your own end, that just short burst speed that you can have to break things up. It's really, really good. And I don't know if this was a thing before. I've only been in this world for a couple of years now, but since my full-time exit from Sportsnet 960, I have been lucky enough to do play-by-play for a number of different junior is saying a bit too. Oh, I've done a bunch of junior hockey too, but a bunch of minor hockey tournaments and varying skill sets, obviously. But the one thing I've really noticed is a lot of teams now put their best skater as a defenseman. And I don't know if that was something that was happening before or what it was, But I do think that the fact that it's happening so much is a testament to what Cale Makar is doing, which doesn't necessarily mean he is, that doesn't just put you on this list, but it just shows the impact that he has had. At 3, it's Nathan MacKinnon. Does everything you would want. He sees the ice so well, is the probably second best skater in the league. Goal scoring, yes. Playmaking ability, yes. Leadership, yes. All of those things. I feel bad. Like I feel like I have to justify the guys further down the list. And so when you get to the top 3, it's like, yeah, you know. And it feels like I don't talk up these guys enough. Like, this is one of the best players I've ever seen in my life. I say that understanding that my life is now coming up on 35 years. So it's been watching this thing for a while now. And he's legitimately one of the best players I've ever seen. He's my favorite player to watch. The shot is amazing. The speed is electric. It is what he does with that speed and how he is able to take over games. Very few have been able to do. And so I think you have to give him major props for that. At 2, Leon Draisaitl, big body. This playoff, he didn't really do it all that much because he was, I think, very obviously banged up. But he has shown in the past that he can be playoff performer. And again, does everything you would want. Playmaking, scoring, skating, all of those things. He does that so incredibly well. He raises up players on his line and makes them all better. And I think something that is very interesting about him, he is very good at also being Robin on a line, right? Like he's a very good Batman. Based on how this list is, as the number 2 player in the world, and I think we all kind of know who number 1 is. If he's on any other team in the league, he's the best player on that team. And so, like, there aren't many cases where he is going to be Robin. He is a very, 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 very good Batman. But during the playoffs, when I think it was clear that he was banged up, and they would put him on the line with Connor McDavid, all of a sudden, he knows how to fit into that role. It's not just like, oh, there's only one puck. How are they going to figure it out? It's like, okay, no. That's that guy. So I feel like I need to now shift into this role. And he played the complementary role perfectly. I don't think there's any role he can't play on the ice. I love the talent. And at 1, it's Connor McDavid. I think like that playoff run is one of the great playoff runs we will ever see in our lives. It is incredible what he was able to do. And I am not saying he is the best player ever, because I do think resume has to count in that conversation. But similar to Patrick Mahomes right now in the NFL, this is the best player, the most talented player I have ever seen. And that, I know who that includes. But when you look at the speed that he is able to do things and the precision, the hand, like just everything is perfect about his game at a speed that no one's been able to play at before. It is remarkable what he is able to do. So will he have a career the same as a Wayne Gretzky? I think very clearly not. He's almost basically run out of time too already, which is more a testament to Gretzky than a knock on McDavid, but definitely a knock on the Oilers. But in terms of just pure on the ice talent, I have a hard time believing anyone's better ever than Connor McDavid. So that is my top 10 list of best players in the NHL. Didn't get the discussion going in the chat that I thought it would. I'm assuming everyone, we're all in agreement, 10 out of 10. Everyone agreed with my list. So that's very encouraging. We go from the NHL preview to the NBA preview as we start our look ahead at the 2024-2025 NBA season by looking back at how the champions from last year put together their team. It's time to start the NBA preview. All right, the NBA season is about a month away, and it is now time to get ready for it by starting the NBA preview. And we start today by looking at how the champions of last year were built and what lessons we can take from that. This is maybe a bit more abbreviated. I'm doing this live, like this isn't an edited down version, but I did, about a year ago, I did a trade tree podcast looking at how the Boston Celtics turned their trade of Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce into this team, that we have here. And that is still a thing that holds up. And so checked out the podcast. You see it? Oh, no. The Twitch. There we go. Couch Potato Diary. It's available wherever you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, all those other ones. I'm going to have the audio version of that out later on today to kind of be a bit of a complement to this, because this kind of picks up where that leaves off almost, because these picks here are affected by that big trade that the Celtics pulled off in trading Kevin Garnett to Paul Pierce. It was a really, Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce to Brooklyn. It was a really interesting deep dive. I'm going to do that. And then later this week, another podcast exclusive, doing the Patrick Mahomes trade tree. That one blew my mind and took me like a week to do, because you keep pulling on the thread of that and it keeps kind of just going and going and going to until you get to a spot where it's like, oh my God, this Patrick Mahomes trade affected most of the league. Just a quick pause on the basketball portion of this. We have Trilly SEB messaging in I need an opinion on a fantasy football trade. Would you trade Garrett Wilson and Jerome Ford for Justin Jefferson? I have J.K. Dobbins and Brian Robinson as my other RB2s. Boy, God damn. That is a really interesting one. I think Jerome Ford is going to be quite good. And my worry is banking on J.K. Dobbins, who has not played a full season in the NFL ever, and Brian Robinson, who I do think is going to be good, but I think is going to be on a bad team. That would concern me a little bit. But you are getting the best receiver in the league. And I do think that some of the concern about Justin Jefferson and the quarterback situation for the Minnesota Vikings, I do think that conversation is shifting a little bit as Sam Darnold, again, against a very bad New York Giants team. And there are going to be bad weeks for Sam Darnold, but I think he is at least going to be good enough to get Justin Jefferson into that role. So you are basically, let's see, because I think Jefferson, if we were to redraft this week, I think Jefferson moves up probably a fair amount. Like we were getting him 8th, 9th in some of these. So let's say you are getting probably a 4th overall pick for, what would Wilson have been, like 12th, 13th, and a 10th round pick. I think I'm also thinking that Chubb will come back. That is fair. To what extent Chubb comes back, I'm not sure. Week 5 is when he literally can come back, but like, what is he going to look like when he comes back? That would concern me a little bit out there, but no, that is fair. I think you are selling at a good time on a Jerome Ford. So, and I have said that Justin Jefferson, I think, is the best receiver in the league. So if you have a chance to get the best receiver in the league, you just kind of do it. So long way of saying that, but yes, I would trade Garrett Wilson and Jerome Ford for Justin Jefferson. I would do that. Yeah. Okay. Back to the basketball now, as we look at how they were built for the Boston Celtics and what lessons we can learn from the championship team coming up. Appreciate you mentioning. Appreciate the follow. Appreciate you chatting. Thank you for the compliment. We finally got the technical aspect of this a little bit worked out. So really appreciate it, Trilly Seb. Greatly appreciate you following along. If you ever have any questions, let me know in the chat. I will try to keep this on format as much as possible. If for no other reason, then I put each segment up on YouTube after, and it just makes editing easier. But I am going to try to get to as many questions as I can from the chat at the best time. But now, let's look at what we can learn from the Boston Celtics for team building going forward. So we start with Jason Tatum. They used the 3rd overall pick in 2017 to get Jason Tatum. They traded the 1st overall pick, which turned into Markelle Fultz, a pick that they got in a slew of other trades, which again, you can listen to the podcast for that one. But yeah, 3rd overall pick. That was a common theme because they also used the 3rd overall pick in 2016 to get Jaylen Brown. And that one directly comes from the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce trade. And so one of the things, like we did this with the hockey the other day, we do this with basically everyone. We now have our foundation set with Tatum and Brown. And there has been a lot of question about those guys until this year when they were just so clearly the best team in the league. About can you win with them? What can you do with them? Is one good playing a 1B situation? Are they too similar? Now we know. And I do still think the payment of Jaylen Brown is going to be detrimental to this team moving forward. But for right now, you have one of the best players in the league. So whatever. So now your foundation is set. How do you build up on that foundation? They go out and get Drew Holiday. They acquire him from Portland for Malcolm Brogdon, Robert Williams, a 2024 first that turns into Bud Carrington, and a 2029 first that we'll just worry about later. And so Drew Holiday is absolutely one of those, like, not the foundation tier, but one of those next guys above a role player but below a superstar player that help you win. He was so integral to so many wins for the Boston Celtics in the postseason, and a phenomenal get. And really, like, they tried it with Brogdon, they tried it with Williams. The first round picks don't matter to them, so just go for it. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. Derek White. They acquire him from San Antonio for Romeo Langford, Josh Richardson, a 2022 first, which turns into Blake Wesley, and a 2028 first, which obviously hasn't happened yet. Again, he was such a great pickup for a team that kind of needed a point guard, or not kind of, needed a point guard, and they were able to go out and kind of pinpoint a guy who was going to fit in this offense. Defensively, he is brilliant as well. Like, he just... all those little things that you need to win, he does those in spades. Amazing. Unbelievable. Like, I am such a big fan of this guy, and he was so important to this team. Kristaps Porzingis, they acquire him in a 3-team trade. They acquire him and a 2024 first. Those go to Boston for Marcus Smart, Danilo Gallinari. I don't think they had to give up any other picks in that particular trade. So this is where some of the smart team building in this process comes along. Because you get Porzingis, who, like, again, part of what made Boston so successful this year, they did get best case scenario from basically everyone. But you kind of need that, right? Like, again, you look over my shoulder here. There is a poster, or a painting of Kawhi Leonard. That team won a championship because they got beyond best case scenario at the time you assumed from Pascal Siakam, Fred VanVleet. You finally got best case scenario from Kyle Lowry in the playoffs. You got best case scenario from a one-legged Kawhi Leonard, and also you got best case scenario from the other team's legs kept exploding. And so you need that to win championships. Very rarely do you have, well, everyone else sucked, but this guy was good, and so they won a title. It's like LeBron has done that, and that's kind of it. So you do need best case scenario to get that. And you got that from guys like Porzingis, from White, and from Holiday, and some others as well. But Porzingis, we all knew what he could be. And it was just a confidence that they would be able to get that out of him. And they did. And he just fit in what they were looking to do so well. If you wanted to, like, flash out and guard him, well, okay, now your rim protection's gone, and Tatum and Brown can just fucking annihilate you getting to the rim. And if they're going to, if they're just going to leave him, he can beat you from 3. And then, okay, well, whatever, he can also beat you off the dribble, and he's a big dude, so he can beat you down low. When he is healthy and when he is on, he is such a difficult player to defend, and it just complemented everything so well. The other part of this, they were able to get a first-round pick in that because they were bringing in Porzingis and just kind of taking him off of the hands of people. Also, that there was a high value of Smart at the time. And he was a bit of a heart and soul player. And so that was greatly critiqued in Boston and in NBA circles for a team that kind of had a reputation of not being the toughest to play against and not being the toughest to kind of throw off their spot, so to speak. To trade away the heart and soul of your team was a very difficult move, I think, for them to make. But I think it allowed Brown and Tatum to grow into that heart and soul maybe a little bit more. Not saying that Marcus Smart was holding them back at all. I think Marcus Smart is absolutely a championship level player if he can fit into the certain role that he needs to fit into. But it kind of forced Brown and Tatum to step up in those ways, and it allowed for room for Derek White and for Drew Holiday to really kind of flourish, and they ended up kind of being better versions of Smart anyway. But long way of saying, they get a first-round pick in this. They use that first-round pick and flip it in the Drew Holiday trade. So you go out and get a very key part of your offense and your championship run, and you're able to bring in another asset that you use to then go out and create more of that foundation and more of that championship pedigree with the acquisition of a Drew Holiday. Al Horford, he gets acquired in a deal along with Moses Brown and a 2023 second for Kemba Walker, a 2021 first, and a 2025 second. Horford, the emotional backbone of this team, and played significantly more minutes than anyone thought he would or could in the playoffs, and gave them everything he had. He is not the reason they won, but he is such a valuable part of that team in some of the things that he is able to do. And when they needed him to elevate his play, he did that. He was great. The other interesting part of this is Moses Brown. Moses Brown gets flipped for Josh Richardson, who again, they flip in the Derek White trade. And so you are seeing, okay, we're going to bring in these assets and maybe they don't necessarily fit exactly what we need, but we can use them in other moves to try to make this team better. And that's what this team did beautifully. This one wasn't 100%. The 2021 first that went to OKC ends up being Alperen Şengün, who I think is fine. A good player, I think. So that's one, like, I don't think Boston fans are going to be looking back like, yeah, we won the title, but we didn't have Şengün. But he is still going to be a guy, I think, that you at least notice in the league. Going forward. And then just rounding this out, Peyton Pritchard, 26th overall pick in 2020. Sam Hauser was an undrafted free agent in 2021. And Luke Cornett was a free agent signing in 2022. And so what did we learn from Boston here and how they built this team? I think this was a masterful job of, and it's weird to talk about human beings like this, but for team building purposes, asset management. They went out and they tried to make their team as deep as possible. When they got Brogdon, when they had Robert Williams, when they had Romeo Langford, when they had all of those guys, they tried to have, okay, we have these three guys at the top, with Tatum, Brown, and Smart. And now let's filter it out and have this like high level bench unit where we're not going to have this significant drop off going forward. And then they ran into Golden State, who had like 1.5 good players, and they won an NBA championship. And I'm not going to say that that was a light bulb moment for Brad Stevens or anything like that, but I do think it was a bit of a, all right, this maybe isn't going to work. Because what do you need to win in the NBA? The NBA, more than any other league, is a star-driven league. And that was always something when we talked about the Raptors. Like those teams that were losing to LeBron, it's like, yeah, but the bench mob. Like the Raptors have the best bench in the league. It's like, that's great. They played 8 minutes. LeBron got 50 and we just lost by 30. So depth maybe doesn't matter. You need some of it. You can't just have Tatum and Brown play 48 minutes every night and then have the bench be minus 25 and you win by 2. Like you do need some depth. But I do think that there is a recognition in Boston that, okay, the depth thing can't be our calling card. We need to go out and get a starting unit that we can trust. And so they turned that depth that they had, the Brogdons, the Williams, the Langfords, and those guys, and they were able to turn that into like trading 4 quarters for $1. And we know those trades are really difficult to work with. And so they were able to turn those into Drew Holiday, who was phenomenal. Derek White, who was phenomenal. Kristaps Porzingis. And also, they were able to needle out some little pieces, whether it's a first-round pick for Porzingis, whether it's also a Moses Brown, and they're able to flip those then into other bigger deals. And so they did such a great job of kind of the way you build winners in the NBA, where you turn a number of different assets that might be into something that absolutely is. And to Toxic's point in the chat, benches are shortened in the playoffs anyway. You need 8 guys. You can do it with one really good one. But you need 8 guys that you can throw out there. You need, I would say, probably 1 to 2 at this point, really, really, really good guys. And then you need probably like 3 or 4 quite good guys, and then a couple of bench dudes who can help. And that is how Boston built this team. And so it was such a great recognition of, okay, what's our championship foundation? Tatum and Brown. Let's build around it. Marcus Smart, maybe doesn't fit the ways that we need. We kind of need a bit more of a ball mover. So let's go out. Let's get a Derek White who fits in this role really well. Okay, well, now we don't really need Marcus Smart. Let's go get Kristaps Porzingis, who provides a shooting option that we really don't have. I know Tatum thinks he is that. He's not. We don't really have that length out there, both in terms of like stretching the floor, and also he is a big, long, tall guy. And so that provides rim protection that they didn't really need or didn't really have, because they also moved Robert Williams, who couldn't stay healthy, for Drew Holiday. They just had such a great recognition of what pieces worked, what pieces didn't, and then taking those didn'ts and fitting them onto other teams to get more pieces that worked with their group. It is a phenomenal job of asset management. And so when you hear later on this year, yeah, maybe they don't have the star power, but this team's deep, that equals first or second round exit. You want to get to this championship point, deep kind of don't mean shit. You need Tatum to step up, you need Brown to step up, and you need those secondary pieces to be at a championship level to go out and hoist that Larry O.B. All right, this was a long one. Thank you all so much for stopping by. Thank you to everyone who has helped with the technical issues we were having in the first few. This feels like it worked, and so we're not gonna push it too far just yet. We're gonna stick with this and do just the live podcast on Twitch coming up on Friday. Tomorrow is a pre-tape day for your boy, so I might, because you can play pre-recorded stuff on here. So I might I probably record the show and then put it up here as a stream anyway, and just be active in the chat because I like chatting with you guys. But the live show again is going to be back on Friday, and that is a major preview day as we go through the NFL, we go through the CFL, we go through UFC 306, and we're going to be back with some boxing talk as well, as it's Canelo Alvarez fight week in that area too. So a lot to cover when we're back live here on Friday. Also going to have another video game stream here on Twitch today. That one's going to be around 3 o'clock Mountain Time. Going to be doing some hockey stuff on twitch.tv/primetimepk. If you missed any of this, make sure you follow so that you get the notifications when we are going live. I also put all the clips up on YouTube, youtube.com/@CouchPotatoDiary. Just search Couch Potato Diary. And all this is available in podcast form. Just search Couch Potato Diary wherever you get your podcasts. You guys have been amazing. I have loved doing the live streams with you guys, and we'll get back at it on Friday for the podcast and later today when we play some video games. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.